Hello and welcome to the PMC Q&A. This is the video where I try to answer your questions that I get either via email. Email is admin@pmclounge.com in case you want to send your questions, or you can drop your questions in the comments below and I'll take them up in our next video. Now, this video, the Q&A video, is typically casual, so do not mind if my language is a bit more casual than usual. Do not mind if I go on a bit of a rant, because sometimes I see BS and I then, shoot from the hip and go on a rant. And the first question that I'm taking up today is an example of that. So this question was sent in as an email to us because there was a video attached to this question, and in that video the person was saying that the new PMP exam, that is the PMP exam based on PMBOK Guide Edition 8, is going to be 20 to 30 times more difficult. Now, the person in this video is saying so because he has an upcoming training batch. I am 100% sure about, because this is absolute BS. This is a total lie. In that video, this person also happens to say that the exam typically becomes more difficult in the months of November and December. And that again is an absolute lie. It is 100% false claim. There is not a single place on all of the internet except in this video where somebody claims or somebody seems to say that the exam is more difficult in certain months and not so difficult in other months. So 100% false claim, an absolute lie. This person is just trying to sell you their upcoming PMP training batch, right? Again, one other thing that the person mentioned, and this is from the time when PMBOK 8 didn't come out, was that the PMP exam is going to change in 1st of January. So you should enroll in their class ASAP, which again has been proven wrong. And this is a typical car salesman technique, if I may call it, right? If you go to a car showroom wanting to buy a car, the salesman is going to tell you that, hey, the car prices might increase next month. The car prices might increase in the next quarter. The car prices might increase in the next financial year, right? So you should pay the amount and grab the car in its current price ASAP. The salesman is just trying to sell you the car, right? So similarly, this person is just trying to sell you their next PMP training batch, right? So don't fall for it. Traditionally, I would say the exam does get more difficult as a PMBOK guide changes, as new exam content outline come up. We've seen that the type of questions have changed. You have graphical questions and you have matched the column and whatnot, right? So the exam does get difficult, right? Over the years, the exam has gotten difficult, but 20 to 30 times more difficult. This is a wild exaggeration. So definitely the world is not ending. Take your time. Do not fall for such salesy techniques, and go prepare the way you want to. All right, next question that I'm taking up is, how do I work with remote teams? And this question comes in from someone who is based in Australia, and I can understand the time differences pretty wild between Australia and specifically other Western countries out there, right? So I would say it is a reality of the world that you have to deal with the remote teams. One thing that you can look into is, how do you minimize the extreme time zone differences, right? Is it possible for you to work with people who have at least 5 to 6 or a minimum of 4 hours of overlap time during the workday, right? So that will give you some time for collaboration. Also, whenever possible, you should create sub teams which is based on location. So if you, let's say, are working on 3 different locations, try to create sub teams, try to create team leads within those teams, so that they can lead these sub teams and you can communicate just with the team leads, right? So this is something that can help you reduce the time zone challenge as well. One of the things that I would highly urge you if you are the project manager, is to have a detailed working agreement for your project, right? So you can define what all communication tools you are going to use. You can define what the expectations are explicitly, right? So you can mention that, people are expected to take a call post dinner once every week, and that is just the demand of the project, right? So project team members, if they agree to it, everyone knows that, once a week it is a possibility that there will be a call, maybe a status call, or maybe, a call for any ongoing issue that they might have to take post dinner, right? Post office hours. Now, another thing is you should always try to over communicate. This is just to make up for the physical distance that you have, right? So you might have, dedicated channels that are used just for, FYI kind of updates. This is also going to promote transparency among your remote teams, right? And you should also share as much as possible, right? So even if it's minor, or even if it's just something which is general awareness, but try to share it. As I said, you should try to over communicate, right? Don't just communicate whatever that's required. Try to over communicate. Try to also create a casual sort of environment. If people are going out on leave, ask them to share their vacation photos, right? It helps create team bonding. And that is my last point, right? You should also try to set aside some maybe dedicated structured team building time, right? For exercises, like even if it's like online games or any icebreakers, right? So it is going to help foster relationships beyond the day-to-day work. So these are some of the tips that you can use to work with remote teams. Obviously it is difficult, but it is the reality of the world that we live in today. Okay, next question is, will PMBOK 7 still be used after the PMBOK 8? So you have PMBOK 7. Here's PMBOK 7. Will this still be used once PMBOK 8 comes out? Now, PMBOK 8 is obviously out, but once PMBOK 8 starts to get used in terms of how the exam changes in July, so come July, do you think PMBOK 7 will still be used? I don't think so. By the way, if you are going to take up your exam as of today or in the next 6 months, PMBOK 7 is not the only book that you should refer to. You should refer to this book also, which can be PMBOK 6 if you have it. But if you don't have it, then look out for this book called Process Groups, a Practice Guide. It is basically PMBOK 6 renamed to Process Groups, a Practice Guide. And you should also look into something around Agile. So you should also study Agile. So these are the kind of books that you should study today. Once PMBOK 8 comes out, I think PMBOK 7 and PMBOK 6, or the Process Groups, a Practice Guide, will not be needed, because PMBOK 8 contains the broad principles that PMBOK 7 contains, and it also contains the processes that PMBOK 6 contain. So I don't think once PMBOK 8 comes around, you have to sort of look into any other books. You might have to look for agile related content for sure, but definitely not for traditional and project management processes. I think PMBOK 8 is going to be sufficient. By the way, there's one thing that I've been saying since 2016, the time that I started this channel, was that the PMP exam is not based on the PMBOK guides, right? Not on PMBOK 7, not on PMBOK 8. The exam is based on the exam content outline, not the PMBOK guide. Now, everyone on YouTube says so now, but I said it in 2016. Here's another thing that I've been saying since 2016 that others don't seem to say right now, but perhaps they might later. There's a difference between a body of knowledge and a guide to the body of knowledge. So this book that you see here, right? This is not PMBOK, right? This is a guide to the project management body of knowledge. It is a guide. It is not the project management body of knowledge. And this is the subtle difference that you need to understand. A body of knowledge for project management means all the books out there that are written on project management. It is an ocean. It is a wide ocean, right? It comprises of all the books, all your PMBOKs, all the articles, all the magazines, all the videos, all the blog posts, anything around project management in the world makes up the project management body of knowledge. This book is just a guide to that project management body of knowledge, right? So, this is the difference between a guide to the project management body of knowledge versus the actual body of knowledge. So, there's a difference between the two. The exam is neither based on the entire body of knowledge because it is an ocean, but the exam is also not based on the guide to that ocean, right? The exam is based on the exam content outline which PMI publishes, and it tells you what PMI is going to test you on. By the way, we've recently done a very detailed video about PMBOK 8. It was a live session. So definitely check that video out. It will be linked in the description below. Okay, next question is it mandatory to take up the PMP training from an ATP, an authorized training partner? Now, here's the thing. PMP exam requires you to take 35 contact hours, a lot of people call it 35 PDUs, of project management education before you can apply for PMP, right? Now, these 35 hours can be earned from an ATP, that is an authorized training provider of PMI. So it is PMI-ATP, or you can take these 35 hours courses from a non-ATP provider as well. You can take up from any university. You can take this up from any corporate training. You can take these 35 hours from any online course as well. Because here's the thing, PMI does not mandate that the training must come exclusively from an ATP. I would like to repeat that. PMI, the Project Management Institute, it does not mandate that you take up the PMP exam training from an ATP. You can very well take this training from a non-ATP, and PMI is going to accept it, right? So obviously non-ATP providers can offer quality training as well. It's not just the ATP that can do so, right? In fact, the non-ATP providers often have flexible courses. They are often cost effective, and their content is something that fully meets the PMI's contact hour requirements. Now, loads of professionals on an everyday basis pass the PMP exam successfully after training with a reputable and trusted non-ATP provider as well. So this demonstrates the effectiveness of the non-ATP training providers. You can choose between an ATP and a non-ATP depending on your personal preference, depending on your budget, depending on your learning style, and also depending on the teaching style of the trainer, right? So here's the thing, a provider, right, a training provider can become an ATP by paying certain fees to PMI. Now, once they have paid that fees to PMI, they are going to recover that fees by charging you higher, right? And in many cases, the courses are also of mediocre quality. So keep that in mind. Anyone can become an ATP if they fulfill the minimum requirements that PMI has and pay the fees that PMI demands. Okay, next and last question for today. Which of the three should I get? CSM, SAFE, or PMI-ACP? Now, CSM focuses specifically on the Scrum framework, right? It is a certified Scrum Master certification. So the basics of Scrum framework, what are the roles and ceremonies in Scrum, right? So it is a good starting point. It offers limited advancement on its own. It is an easy exam, to be honest. Then there's SAFE, which is scaled agile, and SAFE is not a single certification, by the way. A lot of people, when they say SAFE, they are referring to just one certification that SAFE offers, which is typically SAFE Agilist, right? So SAFE certifications, they are for agile at scale. It is called scaled agile, right? It introduces frameworks and structured rules for managing larger agile teams. and even multiple teams working together in a scaled agile environment. And then there's, of course, ACP, which is offered by PMI. This takes you beyond Scrum because it includes Kanban, XP, Lean, and it also puts emphasis on agile principles and servant leadership, value driven delivery. So it is much more comprehensive and it is a much more difficult exam as compared to CSM and SAFE. By the way, we have playlists for CSM certification as well as PMI-ACP certification. I will share the link to those playlists in the description below. Definitely check that out if you're preparing for those certification. End of the day, I would say the choice between these three depends on what your experience is, what your career goals are, and what your company needs from you, right? So all three certifications are valuable, but they can be valuable in different stages of your career. So for example, if you work in a Scrum environment or if you work in a scaled agile environment, definitely go for one of these two certifications. But if you want to learn agile, if you want to learn this umbrella agile concept, then go for something like PMI ACP that covers everything. And at the same time, I would also like to add that CSM is, I would say, very, very popular because Scrum is very, very popular. A lot of people tend to think that agile is equals to Scrum, which is far away from truth. But a lot of people tend to think that, and a lot of companies also work in Scrum environment, and that adds to the popularity of the CSM certification. So if you work in Scrum environment, which is most likely the case if you're working in an agile environment, CSM certification is a good starting point. So that's all in this Q&A session. If you have any questions for me, definitely drop them in the comments or send an email to admin@pmclounge.com. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Consider subscribing if you like our work. Definitely hit the like button and don't forget to check our other videos out. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye bye.